Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you've ever had a neighbor who thinks they're the style police, or you've been told your home is too much for the neighborhood, you're going to love today's story. This one is for anyone who's ever wanted to stand out, make a statement, or just have a little fun with their own property. So grab your favorite snack, get comfy, and let me tell you how my too bold fence became the talk of the town. And the ultimate act of glittery rebellion. Have you ever been told to tone it down just because you dared to be different? Well, that's exactly what happened to me. But instead of blending in, I decided to go all out. And trust me, the results were more fabulous and more dramatic than anyone expected. But before we get into the sparkly details, let me take a moment to wish something special for you. If you're watching this, I want to say a quick prayer for you and your loved ones. May you always have the courage to express yourself. May your home be filled with joy and color, and may you be protected from negativity. No matter how bold your choices are. Amen. All right, let's set the scene. I live in a neighborhood where the HOA is obsessed with subtlety. You know the type: earth tones, beige fences, and a rulebook thicker than a phone directory. Enter Karen, the self-appointed guardian of neighborhood aesthetics. Clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched on her nose, she's always ready to point out anything that doesn't fit her vision of perfect harmony. Now, I'm not one to cause trouble. I keep my yard tidy, my house painted, and my trash cans out of sight. But I also believe your home should reflect your personality. So, when my old fence started to look a little worse for wear, I decided it was time for a change. I picked a nice deep blue, something cheerful but not too wild. Or so I thought. The paint was barely dry when I got my first visit from Karen. She marched up to my door, rulebook in hand, and said, "Your fence is, well, it's a bit too bold for our community. We prefer more neutral tones." I looked at my fence, then back at her and said, "It's just blue. It matches the sky." But Karen was not amused. The next day, I got an official notice from the HOA. Fence color not in compliance with community standards. Please repaint in an approved color. I'll admit, I was annoyed. I checked the rules, and sure enough, there was a list of approved colors: beige, taupe, gray, and something called eggshell. Not a single fun color in sight. But instead of giving in, I decided to have a little fun of my own. If blue was too bold, I wondered, what would Karen think of something truly outrageous? That's when the idea hit me. Bright pink. Not just any pink, but the kind of pink you can see from space. And to really drive the point home, I'd add a healthy dose of glitter. If I was going to repaint my fence, I was going to make it unforgettable. I headed to the hardware store and bought the brightest, most neon pink paint I could find. I grabbed a few cans of glitter spray for good measure. The cashier raised an eyebrow and asked, "Big project?" I just grinned and said, "You have no idea." The next weekend, I got to work. I sanded down the old paint, primed the wood, and started rolling on that electric pink. It was blinding in the sunlight, like a flamingo had exploded in my yard. Once the paint dried, I went over the whole thing with glitter spray, making sure every inch sparkled. By the time I was done, my fence looked like something out of a pop star's dream. Neighbors started to notice, some stopped to watch, others just shook their heads and laughed. A few even gave me a thumbs up. But I knew the real reaction would come from Karen. The morning after I finished, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, waiting for the show. Sure enough, Karen came marching down the sidewalk, sunglasses glinting, lips pursed so tight they could cut glass. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw the fence. Her jaw dropped. For a moment, I thought she might actually faint. She stormed up to my porch, waving her rulebook. "This is outrageous. You can't possibly think this is acceptable." I smiled and said, "Well, you said blue was too bold. I figured I'd try something a little more festive." She sputtered, "This is a violation of every standard we have." I replied, "Actually, the rules just say no unapproved colors. They don't say anything about pink. And as for glitter, well, there's no rule against sparkle." Pause. Have you ever done something just to prove a point? Or had a neighbor who just couldn't handle your style? Drop your story in the comments or just type Team Pink if you're all about bold choices. And if you're enjoying this, hit that like button so we can keep the glitter flying. Karen was not amused. She called an emergency HOA meeting. Flyers went out, emails were sent, and soon the whole neighborhood was buzzing. Some people were outraged, others were secretly delighted. The meeting was packed. Karen stood at the front, waving photos of my fence like she was presenting evidence in a crime trial. She demanded that the HOA force me to repaint. But when the board reviewed the rules, they realized there was no specific ban on pink or glitter. The rules were vague, and I'd technically followed the process for submitting a color change, even if I'd left the shade blank on the form. The board was split. Some thought the fence was a bit much, but others argued it was time to update the rules and let people express themselves. While the HOA deliberated, something amazing happened. My fence became a local landmark. People started taking selfies in front of it. Kids loved the sparkle. A few neighbors even asked for the paint color so they could add a little flair to their own yards. Someone left a bouquet of pink flowers at my gate with a note. "Thanks for making the neighborhood more fun." Even the local paper got wind of the story. They ran a piece called "The Pink Fence That Sparked a Glitter Revolution." Suddenly, my house was famous. People drove by just to see the fence. Some even brought their dogs for glamour shots. A week later, the HOA called me in. The president said, "We've never had a situation like this before. While your fence is unique, you did follow the rules. We're going to allow it, but we'll be updating the guidelines for future projects." Karen was furious, but the board's hands were tied. The pink glittery fence was here to stay. And here's the best part. The HOA decided to let homeowners vote on new color options. Suddenly, the neighborhood was full of color. Pastel blues, sunny yellows, even a few lavender fences. The whole street looked brighter, happier, and a lot less like a row of beige boxes. Karen, well, she still walks by every day, sunglasses on, lips pursed. But now she's surrounded by a rainbow of fences and a community that's a little more open-minded. She never said another word about my fence. In fact, I caught her grandkids taking selfies in front of it last week. Maybe, just maybe, she's starting to see the fun in a little boldness. As for me, I love my fence. Every time the sun hits it, the whole yard sparkles. It's a daily reminder that sometimes the best way to deal with criticism is to shine even brighter. So what's the lesson here? Don't let anyone dull your sparkle. If someone tells you to tone it down, turn it up. Stand your ground, know your rights, and remember that your home is your canvas. Life's too short for beige fences. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend who needs a little inspiration. And remember, may your days be colorful, your neighbors be kind, and your sparkle never fade. Stay bold, everyone.